Good afternoon. My name is Jack Martin. I'm an ordained minister here in the state of Florida. I wanted to do something today that probably needed to have been done a long time ago, but I believe that most are too afraid to because of political correctness to talk on the subject. First off, I'm white. I'm a conservative. I'm a Christian. I'm a father. I'm a husband. But secondly, and very importantly, I'm not prejudiced, but I am troubled by the way white Americans are being labeled in this country today. Uh, no member of my family or any extended part of my heritage has ever at any time owned slaves or in any way remotely supported the idea. But I want to address what I believe to be the evolution in recent years of the racial issue in the United States of America. Those that are old enough to remember the years before President Obama came to office in America, you know that pretty much racism back then wasn't an issue. And in fact, it's far worse today than it was then. And I believe that in part is because the subject has been exploited, the truth has been covered, and lies have been told that create basically a false narrative. The Obama era, in a strange way, really rebirthed a resurgence of racism. Since we elected a black man with a large percentage of the white vote, you would have thought that this would have been the greatest of times to go forward. Martin Luther King would have called this an incredible moment, a moment where a man was judged by the content of his character rather than the color of his skin. And whether it was intentional or not, President Obama created the template for much of the things that you and I have seen that have followed. If you remember when he first came to office, he had a friend who was a professor in Boston who one night lost his keys and was jiggling with the lock on his door. Police were called by a neighbor. They came. In the process, the gentleman became offended. Obama stepped in and said that the law enforcement officer was wrong, and then later had to actually have him come to the White House for a beer to cover over his mistake. And then this was followed by the Trayvon Martin and the Michael Brown, cases in Ferguson, Missouri, saying if he had a son, that he would have looked like Trayvon Martin, without even acknowledging what had actually happened the night when Trayvon was shot, the fact that he was beating a man's head on the sidewalk. Likewise, totally ignoring that Michael Brown had strong-armed a small Asian store owner and had robbed materials from his store. And then when he was called by the police to come over, he grabbed the officer's gun to try to shoot him. And then after stepping away a little bit, he bull rushed him, attempting to get the officer, and he had no choice but to shoot him. Now, I challenge those on the false hands up, don't shoot narrative to download the grand jury report from Ferguson. You'll see that Michael Brown never put his hands up and never said don't shoot, and that was confirmed by multitudes of witnesses, both black and white. President Obama fed a false narrative that law enforcement agencies in general were racist and that all black Americans lived in fear of being stopped by a cop. Now, let me be quick to say I know that there are some black and white law enforcement officers who do act out of character, and in this case we'll speak of white, but the majority of them are not racially biased. Most of them are out there every day just trying to do their job. But by playing the race card, it ignores several issues. First off, number one, if you're stopped by a cop for doing something wrong, don't resist. If he's harassing you, you have a legal system. Cops nowadays mostly wear chest cams, so you have proof there. If you're guilty of something that would lead to arrest, the right thing to do is to let the system play out in its proper fashion. Now, we can't expect race or gender to somehow to give anybody an advantage when it comes to breaking the law. If we're honest, almost every death by law officer versus black American has come when that individual has been resisting arrest. And in several of those cases, it involved an individual carrying a weapon, be it a gun or a knife or other. As long as those type of cases are called law enforcement abuse, we are never going to solve the problem. They are clearly illegal actions by individuals, and in that case, race should play no part in it. When one of these situations take place, another major problem that is overlooked is that it tends to give carte blanche to things like rioting, looting, property destruction, and violence against other citizens and against law enforcement. Now, sadly, in this environment, it has wrongly given Black Americans and woke white kids a sense of invincibility in regard to respecting law and law enforcement. Actually, that leads to more of these type situations where violence is the outcome. Very minimal actions have been taken against any rioters, and only with a small number have they been arrested. We've created a racial class of condoned violence, and that doesn't serve Black or white or anyone well. Unfortunately, few notice the big money that is going into these events. Someone is paying to transport BLM and Antifa activists from hotspot to hotspot. I saw that when we had gone to DC in December, when a lot of them on a plane were wearing shirts, and a couple told me we were paid to get there. There's far left movements in America. There's a clear contingent of that money that doesn't even come from our country. It comes from outside, trying to create racial instability in America. And so ironically, President Trump drew more Black vote, if I'm not mistaken, than any other candidate other than Abraham Lincoln. More conservative Black Americans and even liberals are waking up to the fake message of the Democratic Party. In fact, the Democrats who once ruled the KKK and who voted against every effort in the 18 and 1900s to give Black Americans equal rights, they're the ones claiming to be the friend of the Black man. It's the Democratic Party that touts Margaret Sanger as one of their heroes. This is a woman whose purpose was to try to eliminate Black people in America. So I looked over at some of the recent cases. I looked at Daunte Wright, driving a car not legally registered. He'd previously been arrested for strong arm robbery, also for possession of an illegal gun. He had a warrant out for his arrest, and now he attempts to break away from the police to flee in his car. Yes, what happened is tragic, but had he stayed there, that wouldn't have happened. So we're looking at another one, Rayshon Brooks. He's with his girlfriend. He's still married, but not with his wife. He's asleep in a car blocking a Wendy's restaurant. At the scene, cops are called for assistance. Comes, they arrive. He's tested with a breathalyzer and found to be legally drunk. He is told that he'll be arrested, and they began to cuff him. He breaks away, grabs one of the officers' taser, and actually turns sideways to shoot at him. Now, people claim the officer shot him in the back. He reached back with it to shoot the officer, and what other choice did he have? Another one, Daniel Prude, having a mental breakdown. His family calls the police. He's spitting on the cops, so they put a spit hood on him. The coroner reports seem to point out that it was strictly him being laid on the ground, but nothing to do with the extreme alcohol level in his body. George Floyd passed off a counterfeit bill in a store. The police are called by someone in the store. He's arrested, and then even in the car, and I've seen the video, the car, he says, I can't breathe. The drug content in his body is high enough to be noted as a potential cause of his death. The cop who did what he did was wrong. Nobody in America thought that cop was right, but it wasn't the sole cause. And if George had not resisted, I believe he'd be alive today. Breonna Taylor, another case where her boyfriend, when the cops come to the door with a legal warrant, her boyfriend shoots one of the officers. In the shootout, she is shot and killed. If they were not violating the law, if they would have yielded to the law, she would be alive today. Michael Brown, I already stated, he robs a small Asian store owner. Police are called. He tries to grab the cop's gun. He then moves to turn and to bull rush the officer. The officer really has no choice but to shoot him. There's never a hands up, don't shoot moment. And that, again, I tell you, that can be confirmed by looking at the PDFs of the grand jury. What you don't see on CNN or any of the liberal stations is the number of times that white Americans were attacked by groups of black Americans. There's no mention of the knockout game, also known as the polar bear game, where a black individual will walk up next to a white person, hitting them in the head with the intent of knocking them out. There's no mention of the recent rash of attacks on Asian Americans, mostly done by black Americans. What's missing is the real problem is the large percentage of young black men and women who are raised in a one-parent home where their dad has long been gone. Now, let me be quick to say this isn't a black problem. That's a moral problem in America. There are many white kids coming from fatherless homes that are doing the same exact thing. We've got to work on fixing the home. What's overlooked in the exploding violence in predominantly democratic cities where no effort is made to support the nuclear family. What I see happening in cities like Chicago is shameful and it's tragic. How many black on black deaths are totally overlooked, never even reported, somehow as if they don't matter. Those lives are critical, and those are the lives we need to try to be saving even now. Even in the Ohio death this week, one of the comments made was that the cop shouldn't get involved in a youthful knife fight. Friends, if cops hadn't taken the life of the woman that day, there would have been 2 women dead that day because the one woman would have been stabbed to death, and then he would have still had no choice but to shoot the other. But as long as the Obama-era cronies come on CNN with their gas and their fire and they fan the flame, there's going to continue to be more innocent people that lose their life of every color. The answer isn't disbanding the police department. It's programs community-based that bring a unity and a familiarity with law enforcement. When I was a kid, we had what was known as the Police Athletic League. These are programs that need to be, there's got to be a coming together in the community. It's deadbeat dads of all colors starting to man up and stop being walking sperm banks and start being the father that they're called to be. You know, I want to thank the growing number of black Americans who have courageously spoken out to call cow poop on the rhetoric of the progressives. From the Civil War on, the Democratic Party has used black Americans and then kicked them to the curb until the next election season. They fear having voter registration because the dead can't vote, and a person who would be limited to only one vote can't vote multiple times, and illegals would not be able to vote. That is the only way Democrats can win, is by lying and fixing elections. The answer isn't really that hard. It's honesty. It's called white and black and brown and nations and all colored people standing together to keep America great. Now, I know some of what I said will anger, maybe all of what I said will anger, but we're admonished by Scripture to speak the truth in love. That is what I have attempted to do today. I ask you to think about what I said. If you think I'm wrong, tell me where you think I'm wrong. But everything I said is based on fact. If we're going to fix our nation, we're going to have to do it as one race, the human race, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I do thank you for taking the time to listen. God bless you and have a good day.